We are joined on this episode by a locations manager, a locations assistant, a locations specialist who has served in those positions on everything from Creed 3 and Jack Reacher 2 to The Maze Runner and Paper Street's own first feature camera Obscura, as well as a handful of Marvel movies and TV shows. He is a handful himself. He is our favorite maniac and living cartoon character, Mr. Jimmie Bullis. Jimmy, thank you so much for joining us on the program here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored that you thought of me.
Well, I can't wait after that intro, Sean.
Yeah, it was him or Willard, and that's only a joke for Jimmy, really.
Oh, he's going to be mad that it came down to that. I can assure you.
No, just a real quick story about Jimmy. It was our first feature. We're shooting in Baton Rouge, Louisiana several years ago. And I show up to set. I'd missed a little bit of pre-pro. They're like, hey, Jimmy's short a locations guy. You're going to shadow him this whole movie. And many years later, I still do locations on every one of our movies. I don't know if that's a testament to Jimmy taught me well, or I just am just an unfortunate soul. But
we'll go with I taught you pretty decent.
No, yeah. You did.
I suspect it was the former. All right, let's get into this. So how we always start is just asking what got you interested in film and filmmaking, whether it was a person, a movie, an event. What inspired your interest in cinema?
Well, I had always loved movies. I grew up watching, mainly gangster films and whatnot with my father. I mean, the first movie that I bought was Taxi Driver on VHS, which, being like 9 years old and picking that out in the store, it was kind of a real introduction into, there was something else out there other than The Lion King, when I was a kid. And I went to school and I didn't really like it, so I quit, and I ended up working with my dad for a number of years, and I didn't like that even more. So I went back to school, and this time I went for film studies. And what got me interested in that particular line of work, and I've looked all over the internet for this article. I can't find it, not even sure that it really exists, but I read an article about an NFL player who dropped out of the league to pursue a career in film studies. He went to school for that. That was his major. And at that time, I didn't even know that such a course existed. And so I started looking in my home state, found one down at UNC Wilmington, University of North Carolina at Wilmington, applied, got accepted, and got my degree watching movies, and then just kind of fell into doing locations shortly thereafter.
There was there a location gig that presented itself in North Carolina or around Wilmington first for you?
No, believe it or not, my dad, he used to collect antique cars, and when the economy wasn't doing so hot, so he was selling some of them, and a guy from Poland bought one of the cars. I believe it was somewhere in the 30s model studs, and he sent a driver to get it. And I was just talking to this guy, shooting the shit with him, and told him that I was in school for film studies. And you guys know how it is. If you meet somebody randomly and you say, hey, look, I'm working in movies. I want to work in movies. Everybody's got some second cousin who's a producer or knows somebody who knows somebody. Well, this particular guy, that was what he hit me with was, oh, my buddy, he's a producer out in Los Angeles. And I said, no kidding. Well, look, here's my number if they ever need somebody. And 2 months later, the guy called me. They were doing a movie up in New York. And I skipped school, went up there and worked on it. That was a movie that ended up being called That Awkward Moment with Zac Efron. Miles Teller was in it before he was super famous. Michael B. Jordan was in it before he was uber famous. And I was a PA on that, met a couple of people on the set. One of them I kept in touch with. And I mean, I don't know, it was a couple months later, he said, hey, you want to come down to Louisiana and do locations on this movie called Maze Runner? And I mean, when he called me, I literally stopped what I was doing, packed up my car, and left. I mean, I was on the road 3 hours later, driving from North Carolina to Louisiana, and I've been doing locations ever since. That was close to 10 years ago.
Did you, at that time, know much about what doing locations meant, or were you just like, whatever it is, I'm here for it?
I'll be completely honest with you. I didn't even know that there was a locations department on a film set at that point. On the way down there, I was thinking it over, oh man, I'm going to be going and I'm going to be looking for locations for this movie. I got my camera with me, locations on a movie. That sounds fun. And I mean, I wasn't on the set for more than 30 minutes before they were handing me Lysol and paper towels and saying, go clean those bathrooms. And, and that's what I did for several years, was doing the grunt work. I mean, keeping the set clean and putting up pop-up tents, and, as Sean knows, setting up tables and chairs, layout board.
Oh, yeah. I'm laughing because of the PTSD.
Yeah. It was hard work.
Yeah, I mean, the glamorous part of the scouting is there too on tech scouts and such, and you do get to do that. But yeah, there is a tree, I guess, in a sense, where the bottom of that rung is the cleanup. And I hate putting up pop-up tents. However, I'm a pro at it. I can do it really quickly by myself. But repetition gets you to becoming an expert. But so I guess to that point about the department or the position, so many crew positions are part of an advancement tree. Like you start as a camera assistant on your way to a DP maybe, or you start as a PA on your way through the AD track, as we talked about with the previous guest, Jessica Dean Rose. But locations being very specific, is there something particular about it that kept you around? Was it an attractive role beyond the grunt part of it, or is there something particular you do like about it?
Well, yeah. So at that point in my career, when I started out, there wasn't a happier person alive cleaning restrooms. I had it in my mind that I want to work on movies, and I'm going to do absolutely anything I have to do it. And I mean, I want to say my second week on that job, I worked 101 hours, and I was incredibly grateful to just be given the opportunity to be on a major motion picture. Some people, they don't get so lucky or they get discouraged. And I was convinced, that I'm going to do whatever it takes and I'm going to work really hard. And it was fulfilling work for me because I finally felt like, okay, I made it. And then when I started advancing, the location department in and of itself is a way, not all the other departments get to network and meet as many people as we do. And we get all kinds of access that a normal day-to-day job wouldn't provide you. I mean, at any given point, I might be in the locker rooms at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, or, I might be at the top of Terminal Tower in Cleveland, Ohio. It's just, you get to do interesting things, and you build these relationships with people along the way that you keep up with, just like you. I've been known you for years now, Sean, and I saw you up in Ohio. That is what's most fulfilling to me about this particular job, is the relationships that you build. No, here.
Yeah, that's great. You kind of have the keys to the world in a strange way. Can you, for a lot of folks that maybe aren't familiar with the position, can you kind of provide a summary of the roles and responsibilities of a location manager from pre-pro to being on set?
Yeah, so generally speaking, the location manager is one of the first people hired on the project. They will either be given a script or some sort of a guideline as to, okay, we're shooting this movie and this is what we're thinking. These are the locations that we are going to build or we're planning to build, and these are the ones that we think makes more sense to shoot practically. So what we need you to do is find these ones. So, you'll either, as a location manager, assign scouts to that specific task and, help them along the way, or you'll scout yourself. And then as you start to approach and things start to solidify and you get closer to principal photography, you begin turning in budgets and figuring how much this is going to cost. And you break down, okay, we're going to be prepping for a couple of days here, filming a couple of days here, wrapping. You try to kind of guesstimate what it's going to cost production, what kind of workforce you need. And then when you're actually filming, you handle the logistics of the day-to-day affairs out in the real world. Where's the crew going to park? Are there facilities for them to use? Where are they going to eat? Where's base camp going to go? Where are we going to put all these working trucks? It's essentially a traveling circus, and you got some projects that are easier than others where you've got 4 or 5 locations the whole movie, and you got some like Camera Obscura, for instance, that were a bit more challenging because you're moving from location to location every single day, sometimes multiple locations in a day. And that's what the locations manager's job is to think about that and kind of in a broad scope, see how the film itself is going to mesh with the real world and get the permits and the insurance of it all, the logistics, if I could sum it up in one word, logistics.
Right. And what are maybe some things that people, not in the film industry or even fellow crew people don't understand about your position? Like maybe something that surprises people.
Well, it surprises me sometimes because you'll get disgruntled crew members that will approach you and say, why on earth would you choose to film here? This is a nightmare. We're in the middle of a swamp. Like, why would you choose this? And you got to explain it to them. I didn't choose this. I provided multiple options for our production designer to view and to see and to then show our director. They chose it. So, I'm the middleman here. If you want to point the finger at somebody, it ain't me. And then to come full circle, other crew members think that we're the guys that pick up the trash on set, and that's it. And there's just so much more involved in the job than making sure that you leave a place better than you found it.
No, valid points. And if I can just go back to one thing, we were a little too big for our britches with Camera Obscura, where we got our first feature film, and the thing had, I want to say 17 locations for 20 early, low 20s day shoot. And a couple company moves throughout. And we did the very kind of rookie thing where, don't make a movie with kids and dogs. And then we do all the things that they tell you not to do. But again, so it was trial by fire. So I will say, in all honesty, like Jimmie was a very good mentor in that regard, because I did get thrown into it, and nothing better than doing a multi-location shoot on a dime and company moves. But similarly to Becky's question, Jimmie, when scouting for locations, like what are some things that you look for that most people would not even think about as far as logistics go, or everything from light poles to just outlets and all kinds of stuff? Is there anything in particular you could tell people, like, you don't even think about this, but you got to think about this?
Well, the first thing is, generally speaking, if you're on a project, there's going to be a zone. And I want to say it's around 30 miles from where your stage or your production office is, or maybe the center of the town that you're in. However, your production elects to go about it, and whatever agreement they've made with the various unions. But okay, so then you're strapped with, okay, well, can I go past this zone to look for these things? And sometimes production will let you. If you're looking for just the perfect spot, you got to go outside of that. And then that introduces a host of costs to production, and the crew has to travel further to get to it. But, if you find the perfect spot, or at least you showed it to them, and then they've seen everything that they can see, and they ultimately make the decision whether it's worth it or not. And then, of course, if you're out in rural areas, you're in the back of your mind, you're always thinking, okay, where are we going to park? I've got 200 crew members that I have to get out here at the end of this dirt road. And then you work it through as a team, and there's lots of dialogue going on up until the point where you actually get there. And communication is key. And with any place that you're scouting, you're ultimately going to come up with problems or challenges, I should say. And it's always good to communicate those early. If there's a problem, you got to get it out to the people that make the decisions immediately. You can't let it linger. And that just is something that I'm always thinking about whenever I'm going out looking at places. Like, even if say that, you're scouting for a modern home and you go to the house and it's great, but that the homeowner is going to be a pain. You can really kind of gauge that after your first interaction with somebody. So you need to let them know that there's just all these factors that go into it aside from just finding the spot. I hope that answered your question, Sean. I'm not sure if that's the way that you were hoping that I would go with it.
No, you're good. And when I mentioned light poles, it was kind of to your point about sometimes you're working on period stuff. And I know the smaller the movie, the less likely somebody's going to pick up an electric pole out of the ground and move it. Meanwhile, Marvel comes through a town and they're like, we're going to make this period, and they can uproot every single bit. They could redo the houses. They could do the whole thing. So you've been on all sizes. So that was the first thing that came to my brain about, like, you're checking for stuff, especially I know you worked on Free State of Jones and some other things that you got to hide all the modern stuff. There could be a city right out of frame. So that's kind of what I was getting at. But yeah, you answered.
Yeah, I mean, and to your point, Free State of Jones, that was one of the hardest projects that I've ever done, and at the same time, one of the most fulfilling. I mean, period pieces are my favorite to do, and working on that project, I actually did have to get light poles moved in the center of a modern town in Clinton, Louisiana. And I mean, when we did it, the entire town was without power for 4 hours. And I mean, that's something that most movies won't even entertain. And so to do something like that, we really had to come up with a solid plan. Okay, the power company's going to get here at 10 in the morning. You guys have to have the new poles set behind the buildings where we can't see them. The tops of them have to be a certain height so that the camera doesn't pick them up later. You guys have to jerk the poles down, put them back up. I mean, it was fun to figure all that out.
Wow, that's crazy. I would never have thought about turning off a town's electricity for a certain, even just 4 hours is a long time. That's pretty incredible. You're able to pull it off.
There were some upset people for sure.
I'm sure there always are. There always are. Film crew comes in, there's going to be somebody that's upset. If not the Free State of Jones, like what is one of the most, maybe this could be a two-part question. What's been the most challenging location you've had to find? And then maybe what's been the most challenging location to actually manage?
The most challenging location that I've had to find. I'll tell you, and this might be a silly answer, but if you're scouting for certain types of homes, the one that just is hard for me is if somebody's in Atlanta, where I currently reside, we're on a movie, and they say, yeah, we're looking for a bungalow in Atlanta. It's just put your finger on a map. They're everywhere. So, looking for something where there's so much of it is sometimes a bit more overwhelming to me than say, hey, we're looking for a ultra modern home, because there's not that many of them. You can just go through and use your resources and find all of the modern homes. But whenever they're looking for something so specific and there's so many options, that is what gets challenging to me. And especially when you're scouting homes. Homes aren't like scouting convenience stations. You have to put in a whole other level of work. And that a lot of times is going and knocking on the door. And if you're knocking on someone's door at 2 p.m, they're either not there, or it's usually a mother who's home alone. And so, it's already starting out on an awkward foot. And so you have to kind of have your spiel put together. If they do answer the door, you need to take several steps back, explain that you're not a scam artist, give them your paper and your card. And you usually have to go through a system of call me if you're comfortable with this. They usually won't let you write in, so it's just a whole other layer that is involved in finding homes. The most challenging to manage was definitely my set on Free State of Jones in Clinton, Louisiana, simply because we had to do so much to make that town period appropriate. I mean, everything 360, you could see it. So we had to touch every single building, put facades on every single building. We had to go inside of every single building. And so when it's all said and done, sometimes you can do a location and you do one location agreement and that's it. This one, you're doing 50. And it's more challenging, but they generally, the producers will give you more time, especially if it's a period piece. So whereas you might have a week or two to prep a home, like I was referencing earlier, you might have 3 months to do a whole town. But there's a whole other level of communication involved in something like that, because you have to get everybody on board and you have to get everybody comfortable with the idea. And you want everybody to have fun in the end. But what I found is 90% of people will enjoy what you're doing. 10% you just can't make happy. So, it's that in and of itself is a challenge that you have to figure out. And that's what makes the job fulfilling and fun in some aspects, is the challenges involved in all that.
No, that's fair, and kind of a microcosm of the real world too. There's always going to be a few that just you can't please no matter what you've done. Maybe the only bad part of the job is that you do get that 10% that'll just hate you. And you become the face of that hate as a locations guy, who's usually the one apologizing. Last one out. Hey, sorry, we broke that tile. Hey, sorry that precious artifact got dropped.
Yeah. Because they look at you. You're a representative of the movie. Exactly. They don't look at the grip who ran their cart into their door that, their great grandfather built with his bare hands. They're not looking at him. They look at you.
Yeah, comes with the territory there. Like you said, the fulfilling stuff outweighs that, but it is funny that we just doing it even one time, you'll have a few of those instances where the people just, all they know is your face. You're the face of this movie. In a similar vein, too, is there a place, a location that just flat out told you no matter the cost? Because I know you've been on some major, large stuff, and I have a feeling if it's Disney, Marvel, whatever, that if they wanted to destroy Union Station for an action scene, they could just rebuild it. But is there a major location that has been just a flat out no for you yet on the bigger ones?
There has been, and it happened recently. I was scouting for Blade for Marvel Studios, and working on a Disney production. Period. Generally, the people that are above you, they don't want to hear no at all. It's okay. How can we make this work? And we were looking for a particular location. I'll just say this. And the person that owned it, he was in the middle of negotiating a sale between 3 different people. And it was a lot of money involved, millions of dollars. And he just wouldn't talk about it at all. There was nothing that we could say, and there was no amount that we could put on it that would make him change his mind. And I mean, we talked in circles and circles, and this is going to be the perfect place. Please, let us look at it. Let us come in. Let us take pictures. And it was no. I mean, to the point where I was basically hung up on. And if there's a multi-million-dollar deal involved in selling a place, there we can't really compete with that, because realistically, no production is going to pay millions of dollars to film somewhere. They're just not going to do it. So yeah, that's one instance where we weren't going to have enough money to make it work.
You touched on a bunch of different nuances of this role, but what would you say maybe is the most challenging aspect? Is it just being told no? Is it the continuing relationship fostering, but always knowing there's a moment where it could change? Is it just keeping both the crew happy and the location happy? What would you say might be the larger challenging aspect of locations managing?
The most challenging aspect to me, without a doubt, is schedule changes. Because, especially if they hit you at the last minute with actor availability, because there is no arguing your way out of that. If the actor is not available to film on the day that you have prepped for, then you just don't film. I mean, you can't make the movie without them. You can hire another camera guy. You can't, get another Will Smith. So if there's a schedule change, whether it be due to actor availability or weather or any other number of logistical problems that production hits you with, you essentially have to do everything over again when it comes to planning. If you've got parking lots booked for a certain day, you have to call and rebook them and pray that they're not booked for something else. And if they are, you have to find alternates. You have to talk to the location, make sure they're okay with it. You have to talk to all of your vendors, change the dates on everything. Depending on what's going on, you may have to change the orders themselves. If you have permitted through the city, you have to alert them and either re-permit or do some sort of an addendum. You really have to basically go right back to square one and do it all over again. And I've had that happen to me. I had it happen to me on Ant-Man and the Wasp for a particular location 8 different times. And I had to go back and change it and change everything 8 times before we finally got to where we actually filmed.
Oof, that sounds frustrating.
It is challenging.
All right, we'll ask something a little more pleasant then. So you talked about Free State of Jones being a project you're really proud of, especially because of the way you were able to transform really that entire town. Maybe as a different example, is there a particular location you found that you didn't have to change much of, and you were so happy that you found the perfect thing that didn't actually require much change?
Yeah. So the thing that's coming to mind right now is on Creed 3, which we finished filming it about a year and a half ago. It's just come out recently. But the big task on that movie was we need to find a modern home in Atlanta that fits the needs of the production, which, I don't know if anybody's seen it or has, spoiler alert, the child in the movie is deaf. And so they really wanted a home with an open feel And it was hard. I mean, I think I scouted 40 or 50 modern homes, and there was a home that one of the location services that I use represents, and they were talking to another project, and they were moving forward, and they didn't want to talk to us at all, and it kind of fell through, and they allowed us into their home. And this was a family that did not need the money. They really weren't too interested in filming, but they got excited about the particular project that it was. And they thought that it would be cool to be involved in something like that. And the house ended up being perfect. There was glass landings in it that looked like it would have been built for what is called deaf architecture, which is something that I didn't even know existed. But I got to learn quite a bit about that sort of architecture working with the production designer on that. And I guess to scout 40 or 50 homes for a certain thing and just get no, this isn't working, no, and to be really pounding my head against the wall and finally getting it, that was cool. And it was a very, very nice home. We didn't damage anything, surprisingly. It was the last day of production when we actually shot it. Michael B. Jordan was thrilled. It was just, that was fun.
Oh, that's awesome. And I know the exact location you're talking about, and it really appears on camera. It's very striking.
Yeah,
And how cool to get to learn about deaf architecture. Now I'm going to research a little bit about that. It sounds like it was not only rewarding in that sense, but of everything kind of falling into place, but also a learning opportunity, which is always cool.
Yes.
So what is maybe some advice you could give indie filmmakers, right? Maybe people just starting out making their first movies, when it comes to locations. Are there kind of words of wisdom you would pass along, like things to look out for, the importance of maybe hiring a locations manager for those on tight budgets?
Well, the unglamorous piece of advice that I would offer is make sure the insurance is there, which I'm sure, if somebody's to the point where they're making a movie, they inevitably have thought about insurance. But there's that aspect of it. And, I watched some videos of a guy named Dov Simmons, which you guys might know who that is, but he was the indie filmmaker guru guy. And his thing was one location, write a script around one location. And I don't think you have to be that severe with it. But with indie filmmaking, that is a big expense, is the locations of it all. We got really creative on Camera Obscura, getting 17 locations done on that project, as you know, Sean. But, if you can put more into a couple of larger locations, it will inevitably make it easier on you and everybody else. Even if that comes to filming at your parents' house or something like that. I don't know what the exact workarounds would be, but it would be to limit the number of physical locations that you're going to do.
Yeah, and you can put more up on screen, right? The less locations you have, generally speaking, right? Because you can take more time to dress them properly. You don't have to spread your art department as thin. In addition to we all know how company moves in a day can be pretty just time killers as well. So I think that's pretty good advice.
Yeah, I would say somewhere between Dove's recommendation and 17 is the good number. Maybe not one, but not 17. No, Jimmy's correct. I mean, just using our movie as an example, we took over Celtic Studios offices. We converted that to a police station, a holding cell, and a couple other spots. We took an apartment building and doubled it as another person's house and an apartment. I want to say we even shot in our own cabanas we were staying at as another location. So yeah, it was that kind of trickery. And, Jimmy earning his money was the one suggesting all those things, like, hey, what about the backside of this room? If you ever have a location that gives you carte blanche, look at the other little rooms. Maybe those little rooms will double as a office if you need one, or some other locations though.
Yeah, and if you need a home, use your construction coordinators. Do you remember doing that, Sean?
Oh, that's right. Yes, you're right. Sorry. Yeah, we made it work somehow on that one.
Yeah.
Well, that concludes the formal portion of our interview, and now we're going to move on to the rapid fire 15, which sounds scary, but I promise that it's not. It's actually really fun.
I gave Jimmy a sort of hint about what this was, but I didn't really give him full explanation. But we do this little 15 question questionnaire to every guest, and it's more about like stuff you like. It's not a cool test. It's not a there's no points, just the first thing that comes to mind. But honestly, with you, I'm kind of interested because despite this man sounding like he may have been a Looney Tunes character with that accent, which we love, this man is one of the bigger cinephiles I know, and I'm not joking. Like, he is learned in a lot of like foreign films and a lot of classic movies. So I tried to put a few of those in these questions. So we'll see how we go here.
Oh boy, that makes me nervous.
Well, anybody that's watching Taxi Driver at age 9, that speaks volumes. All right, we'll start with question 1. What movie do you think you have seen the most in your life?
Well, he just set me up as a cinephile, but I'm gonna have to say The Matrix.
Ain't nothing wrong.
I thought you were going to say something like Happy Gilmore. No, like, that's fair. That's the most is usually the comfort movie. We get that. We're not going to judge you on any of these.
Yeah, I love that. That's my guilty pleasure for sure.
I always say I don't believe in guilty pleasures because you shouldn't feel guilty about it.
Yeah, don't feel bad about it.
I like that. I'm taking that one.
Yeah, you shouldn't. Number 2, what's the first film you saw as a kid that really stuck with you as far as giving you nightmares or just keeping you up at night?
Dead Presidents. There was the scene where Chris Rock had overdosed. I don't know if you guys recall that, but he looks bad. I mean, he's sitting there in a chair with a needle hanging out of his arm, dead. And that was just so shocking to me as a child that I don't even know how I was watching it, but I was. And it just stuck with me. That was one of the first times that I had seen something like that on screen. And it terrified me.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I saw that film around whenever it hit on video at the time. So I was probably, 9, 10 or something when I saw it. That was really intense. I know exactly what you mean, the way they shot it.
Yeah, it was very sad, very grim.
Yeah. Well, maybe not positive, but kind of maybe on a similar note in some ways. Question 3, is there a movie or show or song that always makes you emotional and brings you to tears?
In the Mood for Love by Wong Kar-wai. That's that whole movie.
So good.
Told you he's a cinephile.
That song, when they do the slow motion, that's my ringtone. Like that, I don't know. It does something for me. It's so romantic, I guess.
Yeah. Number 4, what would be one of your favorite needle drops and or diegetic use of music in a film? You just actually named one.
Yeah, can I go with that again?
You can go with that. Every time I've watched that movie, that theme stuck in my head for weeks.
Yeah, it is a masterpiece. I mean, that, and as soon as they cue it, you just get emotionally involved with the characters. They're so close to each other, yet they're so far apart.
I love that that's your ringtone. So that legitimately, even if we hadn't asked that question before, I think you still might have answered it the same way. All right. Question 5. What's your favorite genre of film or even subgenre?
Well, I guess it's a kind of a 2-parter. I'm a real sucker for the gangster movies. And that just goes back to my youth. And that's what my dad loves. And he has all kinds of movie posters and memorabilia and whatnot. And then, because I don't know how to phrase it otherwise, but my guilty pleasure, especially watching with my wife, is romantic comedies.
Again, nothing guilty about it. We get it. Those are comfort movies too.
Yes.
Number 6, who would you say is your favorite cinematographer? Or if you don't know one off the top, maybe what's a movie you think of when you think of great cinematography?
I think Chivo Inarritu's cinematographer is, he's, if I'm not mistaken, won several Academy Awards. But yeah, his stuff is just very visceral and brutal. I guess Roger Deakins would be a close second, but he's just mastered the art of it. I feel like that's kind of a cop-out answer.
Not really.
Who's the most influential band of all time? The Beatles. You can answer that. Deakins is a god among mortals in a lot of people's minds. So,
all right. Who is your all-time favorite director?
Going back to the gangster movies and I'll probably regret this for the rest of my life, but I had an opportunity to work on Scorsese's most recent film, and they filmed that out in Oklahoma, and I didn't do it. And that's because I firmly believe in not, once you start a project, you don't jump off of it, whatever the reason. I guess that's part of a moral code there. And I had just started another project when I got the call to go out to Oklahoma. But Martin Scorsese, for sure, he's just, I wouldn't say maybe exactly an auteur, but his movies have just been so profound on even me pursuing my career. It would definitely have to be him.
No, I had a feeling you were going to go that way. And if not, maybe some off-kilter answer like Jean-Pierre Melville.
Oh, well, Jean-Pierre Melville made my favorite film, which is Le Samurai. I don't know if that's going to be one of the questions, but I've got a Subway quad. I think it's a 70-inch movie poster original hanging in my living room of that movie.
No, I'm a big fan of that one as well. And I remember you texting me to tell me you got a massive poster of that movie way back when, because, I think even when we were on that shoot, you were turning people onto that movie. I think you made Willard and others watch that movie, but I swear by it as well. It's sent me down a whole rabbit hole with him and Le Cercle Rouge and all those others of his.
Yeah.
What is your favorite work by another artist I know you're a fan of? What's your favorite work of art by Salvador Dali?
I saw a picture that he did in the Detroit Museum of Art. And it was a little skull. I don't know what the name of it is, but if people want to look it up, it's a very small picture in the Detroit Museum of Art that Salvador Dali did. I think it's the only one that they have. I hate that I don't remember what the name of it is. I've actually been to Dali's castle in Figueres, Spain, where he's interred. I'm a big fan of his stuff.
Have you been to the museum in St. Petersburg, Florida?
No.
You got to go check that out, only because 3 of the 4 of his major pieces, the original gigantic versions, are there. So it's worth a visit if you find yourself in Central Florida for sure.
All right. Is it the one with the ballerina, the dancer in the skull? He has a lot of skull-based things.
Yeah, I don't really.
He also has the famous "The Women Forming the Skull," which became the Silence of the Lambs homage hidden in the picture there for their poster as well.
Okay.
Just go down the rabbit hole if you're curious about Dali. Anybody
that can't hurt anyway. All right, now we're gonna take a turn here. Who was your first celebrity crush?
Meg Ryan.
Back to the rom-coms.
Yeah, for sure.
She made him sleepless as well. You've had the good fortune to meet a lot of great people. Who would you say is the nicest celebrity you've ever met?
I'll have to go with Matthew McConaughey.
All right.
I see what you did there, Sean. All right. Do you have a favorite concert you've attended, or maybe a very memorable concert experience?
Yeah. So Bret Michaels did a concert in Baton Rouge off of Bluebonnet in the parking lot of a Mexican restaurant. I want to say it was the Rock of Love kind of deal that he had going on. And I did not have any interest whatsoever in going to it. And, the girl I was seeing at the time, who is now my wife, was just like, you got to come. And of the concerts that I've been to, I just saw the Rolling Stones recently when they were here in Atlanta. And that Bret Michaels concert where he's singing the Poison songs and all that was by far the most fun I've ever had at a concert.
Good to know he's still got it, because Vince Neil does not. We watched him come out drunk in Tampa about 15 years ago and get through a song and a half and then fall down, and they took.
Oh, yeah.
I'm glad to know Brett can still do it, because I was fellow hairband sucker, so that was disappointing. But I'm glad to know Michael's can still do it. Similar music question. What would be, it might be the In the Mood for Love theme, but what would be your walkout music? So if you were coming out to talk locations with somebody for a TED Talk, or if you were coming out to fight or as a ball player, what's your entrance music?
Oh, man. I go through so many different phases, but I would probably say Radio Gaga by Queen.
Hey, that works. I thought you were going to say Unskinny Bop at this point, but yeah. We'll take that one.
All right. What is your favorite local eatery in Atlanta? Like a spot that you take someone who's out of town and, in there for the weekend.
Yeah. So, if we're going to do the hamburger, and fries route, there's a place called Little's on Carroll Street that's kind of overlooked. I want to say the place is over 100 years old. It's a little market for that part of town. I mean, you can go in and, the place is not very big. It might be as big as some people's living room. And they've got a flat top grill in the back, and they make the best cheeseburger in Atlanta as far as I'm concerned. Little's.
Good to know.
I'm looking it up right now. It is looks like the perfect sort of hole in the wall hamburger spot.
It is. It is fantastic.
Question 14. If you could have one answer to just one unknown question in the universe, what would it be? Like, is there a God? What's the meaning of life? The day I'm going to die? Who killed JFK? Are there aliens? What's the one question you would want answered? It
would be for sure alien related, are there aliens? Or, and a close second would be how, or maybe not how did they do the pyramids, but were there civilizations before that we just don't know about? Advanced civilizations on Earth, so to speak. I'm a super nerd when it comes to that sort of stuff.
So you're a big ancient aliens kind of fan?
Oh, yeah. I was reading, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Zecharia Sitchin, but he wrote a book called The 12th Planet. I was reading that in the 6th grade. I was super into the aliens and the Sumerians, and, it was a thing. It still kind of is.
All right. Last question, question 15. What would be your dream project to either be a part of in your current role, or maybe you want to write, direct, star in something? I don't know. It's your dream. What would it be? Like, maybe it would be about alien life forms, or something about our history with some sort of ancient civilization. But if not that, is there like a genre, a period that you would like to tackle that you haven't had a chance to yet?
I've never done any sort of documentary work. I've done reality television. I've done narrative television, narrative film. So I think that maybe doing something in the documentary world geared towards travel would be something that I would really enjoy. We just watched the Anthony Bourdain documentary, and I mean, you think about him having the best job ever, traveling the world, eating food, talking to people. But then you also got to think about the crew that was involved with that. Like that, something like that where you just globetrot would be something right up my alley. I'm leaving in less than a week, and I'm going backpacking in Central America. Like I love travel. If I can do it and I'm not working and my schedule allows, I skin out. If my wife can go with me, great. If not, I go solo or with friends. Like it's just something that is very important to me. So to mold that in with work just seems like a win-win.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too, that you're driven to locations, like, and the desire to travel and just, meet different people, see different sites. Are you also an adventurous eater?
I would say yes. I'm willing to try, anything as far as the local cuisines are concerned. I had pigeon in Egypt recently. I did guinea pig down in Peru. I'm excited to see what we got going on down in Central America. I was kind of bummed. I went to Mexico, I don't know, I guess it was 2 years ago, and the big thing was scorpions. And there wasn't a single place in Mexico City that served them that I found. So,
oh, so you didn't get to have your fill of scorpion.
No, I did not.
The movies, once again, have lied to us.
Yeah, exactly.
I believe that they are all fighting like they do dog fights in a circle when I go down to Mexico.
Yeah, Amoros Paris.
There you go.
Right, with a sepia filter over everything.
Of course. That concludes the Rapid Fire 15. You gave some solid answers there.
Well, thank you.
A couple all-timers even that I wasn't expecting. Before we wrap up, I know we're in the middle of a strike as we record this, and you've been a little delayed in some aspects, but do you have any projects coming up that we can keep an eye out for that might be public and you can talk about?
I've got my fingers crossed that Blade is going to gear right back up and that I'll go right onto that. And, I've spent a lot of time prepping on that movie, and we just haven't filmed yet. I know that this on the slate and it'll be released later than originally thought, but I've gotten to know a lot of the crew, and it's a bit like a family, and it's just something that I want to see through. I want that to be on the old resume and the memory bank there, that I saw that one to completion, especially with the time invested thus far. As far as that, I don't have anything else on the docket. Who knows how long this writer strike's going to last? Hopefully it only lasts a couple more weeks, but that's an optimistic view. And I consider myself an optimist in that regard. I think it's going to be over sooner than later, but I'm going to go enjoy my traveling up until that point. I got a one-way ticket.
Oh, perfect time for that, backpacking trip and some exploration.
Exactly.
And I'm excited too for the Blade movie. I'm a big fan of the franchise, so I'm curious where this one will go.
Yeah. And again, Jimmie, we thank you for the time. This is I jest about locations, and the guys give me grief about it, how every time I end up falling into it accidentally, or at least helping out with it when some other folks come on to do the grunt part of it. But no, it is as rewarding as you say. Like there's some grunt aspects to it, but yeah, it's also incredibly fun to foster those relationships and maintain them over the years. And again, we're glad we've kept you around too in proximity. We haven't worked with you again, I don't think, since then, 2017, but we know we will again someday soon.
Yes, I plan on it.
You might be too expensive for us, but we'll try. Maybe we'll give it the family discount for us.
All right.
Yeah, thank you so much. I actually, learned a lot more about locations management. It's not something, I've done it myself for small indie projects, but I've never actually had that position before on a set. So it was great to hear your perspective and hear your advice. So thank you for taking the time to chat with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. Like I said, I was honored to be considered to be on the podcast. Thank you so much.
Your resume speaks for itself. I don't have enough locations credits to say I could talk about locations in a proper authoritative way on this podcast. But no, you've been on the short list for a while. And Cameron and I had talked a bit about having you on here sooner than later. So we're glad to make it work here.
Yeah, well, I always get excited when I see y'all's names pop up on my phone. So when I saw that the other day, I was like, "Oh, what's going on in the paper street world?"
Big things. We'll talk about them soon, hopefully.
Okay.
All right. Take care and safe travels.
All right. Thank you so much, Becky. It was great talking with you.
Likewise.
All right. Thanks, Jimmie.
All right, Sean.